Patrick Genovese, a dear friend, old friend, and a Gibson Guitar Rep former. What is that? How do you get that gig? How does one become a Gibson guitar rep, a guitar rep in general, and what is it, and how do you get that gig?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I love having you.
So cool. Thanks for asking me to come do this. I don't know. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like you just said, I wouldn't even have had a clue. The short form answer would be, you're working one day in a bar, and this former sister-in-law sends you an email that says, I think you'd be great for this. This is right up your alley. And she knew I loved to play the guitar. That's all she knew. I loved to play the guitar. And I had worked for the city of North Las Vegas for about 11 and a half, 12 years in parks and recreation, doing events. So I was getting into the concert production business and kind of event planning and stuff like that. And I was starting to gig with my brothers in our little band. And so I kind of had the makings of it. So I read this, Gibson Guitar, and it was just more or less, it was more like outreach marketing, like using the job description itself was to utilize the brand, the product to artists become your marketing wing, right? If they're seen on television, they're seen in movies and film and magazine covers with your product, then that's a win. Gibson in those days didn't advertise per se with money. We had a saying that you'd buy in with wood. And so when I saw the job announcement, I just threw my hat in the ring and said, man, I think I'd be great for this job, blah, blah. It was a new job, new position that they were creating in Vegas at the time. And I thought, no, I actually applied, I should rewind, I applied while I was still at the city. And then I left, and then 8 months went by. And I was literally managing a bar, Big Dogs. I was over working at Big Dogs Brewing Company. And I'll never forget this old guy. This old guy was complaining about his eggs being cold. True story. And one of the assistant managers had said, hey, Patrick, you had a phone call. Some guy named Jeff, And I said, okay, hold on. And this guy's like, well, what about my eggs? I'm like, sir, I'll be right back. Hang tight. So I go back to answer the phone call, and he's like, this is Jeff with Gibson. I'm based in Seattle. He says, you applied for this position? Are you still interested? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, yeah. So meanwhile, I'm talking to the guy. He's like, is this a good time to talk? I'm like, yeah, it's a great time. So he starts talking, and I'm like, no shit. This dude comes in, and he's standing in my office door. You promised me you'd be back. I want a refund. I said, Jeff, can you hold on? I was like, put him on hold. I said, comp this guy's meal, whatever he wants. Just get him out of here.
Yeah, peace. Get
so
out.
I'm like, I'm not going to lose this gig because this guy and his eggs.
Cold
right?
eggs.
I was so pissed. So anyways, that was how that started. And I'm like, I blew this. I'm like, I'm going to kill this guy with the eggs. I'm done. I didn't get the gig. Got all pouty. And so certainly he called me back, and he's like, we'd like to offer you the position. So that started my whole journey, was that little moment.
And how long did you work for Gibson?
Almost 12 years.
Wow.
And there's a change.
That must have been just a surreal 12 years, right?
It was cool. I mean, the company had embarked in 2009 when the company was still jamming pretty good in 2009. However, obviously, as we all remember, the slowdown there with the crash of the economy, and so some things changed, and there were the tightening of the purse strings, as was much probably everywhere in the corporate world at that time.
Everything.
But, super exciting. I mean, I can remember exactly what it was when I got that call, and it was an amazing 10 years. I met a lot of cool people, great lasting relationships, many of which I still maintain to this day at Gibson. They're wonderful people. The job itself is a very insular job. Like I said, nobody knows these jobs really exist unless you're in the inside of that industry. And good God, I mean, how do you get inside? It's hard to get in and break into that. And then even when you're new, and you join an organization with a legacy like that, and you work with folks who'd been doing it for 20 plus years at that time, and they knew everybody. When they're saying, yeah, Alex, and they're talking about Keith, and they're using first names.
Joe.
And,
yeah.
Right. I never thought that would be me. I was like, I'm just going to be the young guy getting, boxing up guitars and shipping guitars. But it certainly, they thrust you into it. Eventually, they have to start divvying up because the artist rosters are big, and there's not that many of us at the time. So there couldn't have been 15 of us.
And you had quite the client list.
Yeah, it was pretty extensive from 10. It would shift from time to time, but I had a lot of really big A-level artists that you worked with. And yeah, the key to working in that kind of a role is not being starstruck.
Yeah.
And I really wasn't ever. Not a single one time, because I grew up around it with my dad being a notable Las Vegas musician who played, around that, and I was kind of exposed to that as a kid. But honestly, I was just having this conversation with a gentleman at lunch today. I don't know, because I play and I was so into the gear, still am, that I was almost jealous. Like, oh, you guys I don't want to give you this guitar.
Right.
Where some of the people that didn't play or weren't like that were like, okay, I can't wait to give Alex Lifeson his new guitar, this or that and the other, whoever it was. And I was like, man, I don't want to give him that. I want it.
Yeah.
So
Alex Lifeson doesn't deserve this guitar.
Things.
I do. Yeah.
But it was, it was nice to be able to have that. And God almighty, it's amazing what a Gibson guitar can do to get you backstage into areas when you don't have credentials.
Right.
Yes, that is a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it burns hot for a long time. And I after 10, 11 and a half years or whatever it was, you do start to kind of, it becomes to identify you,
right,
and you become that guy. It was funny. I was just talking to a gentleman at lunch. He's like, yeah, he worked for Shure Microphones. And he's like, yeah, I'm just the Shure guy. I'm the Gibson guy. I'm sure there's a Fender guy. There's the Paul Reed Smith. You're just that guy that can get things for you. You can get, hey, man, can you get me concert tickets? Can you get me guitar?
Right.
And you kind of lose your identity. I'm not going to complain. That was a wonderful gig.
Right.
I worked for some strange owners, but
yes, didn't you have an owner that told you to go kidnap Mickey Mouse?
Oh, sweet hell, you had to go there.
Oh, I had to go there.
That's true. It's a true story. Yeah. Okay, so are we going there?
We're going there.
Oh, Larry, you didn't bring the beers. He's laughing. So it's NAMM 2015. And, God, I still have the email. I should show it to you. 2015, I'd just been named West Coast Director of Artist Relations, title which I held for maybe a year and a half, not too crazy long before I left. But so we were at the CES show, which is 2 weeks prior to the NAMM show in January. And so I'm feeling good. I got this gig, got promoted, you're feeling walking tall, that kind of thing. And so CES folds up its tents. Now, the NAMM show's 2 weeks from then. 2 weeks. And we'd already been pre-pro in the NAMM show because you can't just plan the NAMM show in 2 weeks. That's been planning concurrently with the CES show. So now the CES activation's done. It's hyper-focused for the next, whatever it is, 14 days before we load in. And get an email from the CEO. He says, it just says NAMM Rethink. I have it. I'm going to show it to you off camera. He says NAMM Rethink. And I said, well, what's that? Jesus, what's this mean? Big, long email from Henry and his son, who was heading up the artist relations team. And it says, there's been a huge change in strategy. We now know Henry wants to create a spectacle at the NAMM show. I'm like, okay, who do we need to call?
Yeah.
It's not to be dependent upon like major artists, right? He's like, lawyers be damned. I want you to kidnap Mickey Mouse. I want to set a bonfire of Les Pauls on the campus of NAMM at the Anaheim Convention Center. I'm like, mother of God, you gotta be kidding me. So I go through the email, but lawyers be damned. I want the cover of the LA Times. I mean, that's what the email says. And I'm putting Patrick Genovese in charge. Report back. Yeah, that's a true story. And so...
Get to kidnapping Mickey, baby.
Yeah, so I'm like, yeah. So we get off that phone call. We get out of that. We get onto another phone call. And I said, well, here's what we're not doing. I said, we're not kidnapping Mickey Mouse because that's a bad look.
And I don't want to go to jail.
And I'm not going, yeah, we'll get to that part about the fire in a minute. We're not going to jail for that. And I'm sure Disney's pretty sensitive to their top mouse, and the IP, use of their IP. So we're not going to do that. And as California's got some pretty tough environmental laws, and post 9/11, I don't think it's good to create a terrorist act of trying to light the convention center on fire. Plus, why are we going to burn guitars? That's sacrilege. Right? So I'm going against everything that the owner of the company is telling me to do. And of course, the puppets on the other end of the phone are going, oh, that's what he said. You got to do it. You got to do it. And I said, we're not doing that. I'm not doing that. Are you going to do that? Whose ass is on the line here? Mine.
Right.
I'm not doing that. So my little girl is, I don't know, like 7 or 8, 9 years old at the time. And we were watching Willy Wonka. This is a true story. We were watching Willy Wonka the day before this all went down. And I'm walking around, well, I got a golden ticket, right? I'm thinking. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I mean, this guy just gave me this gig. I'm going to miss me if I don't do something spectacular, right? And I certainly didn't create anything new here. So I got everybody on the phone and I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to create golden tickets. I totally just ripped it off, right? Like, we're going to create golden tickets and we're going to do the Gibson grab. I just pulled that name out of my you-know-where. So we're going to hide golden tickets. We're going to associate golden tickets with gear. And it won't say what you've won. It's just you've won something. And we're going to get celebrities and artists at the moment it starts, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever it was, to go on and tweet, hey, and we're going to tweet clues. Okay, and we're going to hide these golden tickets at the crack of dawn, so nobody knows where they are, around the Anaheim Convention Center, but not inside the convention center, which for legal reasons was better.
Yeah.
And it allowed us more freedom to allow people who didn't have passes to the NAMM show to take part in it. So anybody going to Disneyland that day could be like, shit, I'm here in Anaheim. Let's go find this and win a guitar. And I said, we're going to total the value of those are $50,000, and then Gibson's going to match that with a $50,000 donation to the Wounded Warriors Project. And our good buddy Jason Hook agreed to donate a guitar and brought one of his combat vet buddies out from Nashville, drove all the way across country to be there to help present the check and the guitar that Jason was going to give away, ancillary to the thing. So we presented this. I presented it, all the circles, graphs, arrows, 8x10 color glossy prints to Henry, and he goes, okay, approved, go. Nothing else. So we do it, and it was a huge success. I think we trended like 3 on Twitter that day, and we had Miranda Lambert and some other big artists were tweeting, hey, did you check this? Reading the clues, basically. And all said and done, we got a big picture in front of the Gibson bus with all the winners with their guitars, their Onkyo home theater systems, whatever they'd won. And so I go back in. I'm all stressed out and ragged. Go back into the NAMM booth in the backstage, getting a coffee or something. I really should have had a cocktail and get a coffee. And Henry comes over and he puts his arm around me. He says, well, you passed the test. So the whole thing was just
to see what
we would do and how we would react, and was silly. But that was kind of how it was in those days.
Yeah,
it was
silly.
a hyper focus on. Well, obviously they went bankrupt because of that kind of, in my opinion, that ideology and losing sight of where they were as a legacy guitar brand, which they have come back and some. I mean, they're back, thanks to the bankruptcy and the ownership. But yeah, that was the kind of stuff that you dealt with. So back to the point about kind of thinking you burn hot in that business.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe under an ownership like now that's level and they understand what they do,
Right.
you could have a 30-year career in that business. But the artist relations side of it, from my standpoint, what I had to deal with and others, not just me, I mean, everybody had to deal with that at that time. I could tell you about tiger prints in Austin, Texas, when the Dark Tiger came out. It's just dark. It's crazy. So I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this that much longer.
Well, now you got to tell me about the tiger prints.
Well,
you can't just give me a
well, they came out with we had a guitar called the Dusk Tiger, which actually is insane that these guitars are selling for like $5,000 on eBay now. But they were, Gibson was trying to push the envelope with automatic tuners and different effects built into guitars and wild designs and this, that, and the other, which purists hate. And but the directives for marketing were just bizarre, to say the least. And my colleagues, my buddy who I was telling you with back in Austin, he and his coworker had to go around and get with the mayor of Austin, and he had to print these tiger prints all over Austin, Texas, and like leading people to and create this like buzz around the Dust Tiger guitar. It was just so silly.
And now they're like $5,000.
Well, yeah, because they become
iconic
or collector's pieces from an era. It's like anything else from an era. As companies have these long 100-year eras, you remember. There's an era when CBS owned Fender. Yeah. There's an era when Norlin owned Gibson. And then the values of the guitars will fluctuate. But I think we're getting away because Henry lost the business. He lost the business in 2018 to bankruptcy. We're now getting away from that. So and I think even further down the line, there are going to be some guitars from that era, like the Dust Tiger, and some others that were one-off, unique, weird, upside-down V guitars and things, that people will look back on that era like, well, that's a collector piece because it's interestingly cool and weird and dumb all at the same time, right?
Yeah, it's a gremlin.
It's a gremlin. It's an AMC guitar, gremlin, 100%. It's a Pinto. Yeah. So, yeah, that was there's oodles of those kinds of stories from my colleagues who worked there for, Yeah, it's wild.
What artist were you given that you were like, oh, God, that actually ended up beating your expectations? Like, sometimes you're going into something like, oh, and then it's like the greatest thing. Who blew your mind out of your list?
Tommy Shaw.
From Styx.
Tommy Shaw. Because I always respected their music. I thought he was great. And I told him that too. He lived up to everything and still does. We still communicate from time to time, which is also cool because I don't work for Gibson, right?
Right.
And that's neat because sometimes it's easy to be forgotten when you can't do something for somebody. It's a very narcissistic world, and it's a here today, gone tomorrow type of world. And I don't fault anybody for that. It's just business relationships at that point. But no, Tommy's amazing. Not only is he an incredible musician, but called me when my dad passed away, and I had been gone from Gibson for 2 years. He thought to do that, and he texted me on Christmas and that kind of stuff. And you remember those things. You can't help it. But as far as being like just blown away, or artists exceeding my expectations, I don't know. Everybody was just really cool.
Yeah.
There was one, I'd rather not share his name on camera.
Yeah.
But, national artist, everybody knows him, but he wasn't real nice. Just
full of himself.
Yeah, just demanding and just not a nice guy.
Yeah.
And there are people like that. So it just is what it is.
What's your favorite guitar that you worked with during your time at Gibson, and why? What was the coolest thing about that guitar?
The coolest thing, the coolest guitar for me, and I did work on a few signature models, not as many as some of my other colleagues did, but Gary Clark Jr. is probably the one. I did work on Jason Hook's guitars with him, but Jason had already had his his idea for his guitar.
Right.
You know, I just kind of pushed it along.
Right.
And in Jason's case, I helped sell the idea that he was worthy of a signature guitar. Now, Jason already had his idea for his signature guitar in mind because he was playing Gibson Explorers, and he was modifying them himself, literally with routers and things to make his own modifications.
Right.
Is when I looked at the guitar and he's like, could Gibson make this for me? And I had to go and convince them that Five Finger Death Punch was going to be big and that they were going to blow up and that he would be visible and blah, blah. They weren't really sure at the time.
Right.
I think we all see how that worked out. But
Yeah.
Gary was interesting because Gary's story was a little different in that Gary lived in Austin, Texas. So I was like, it was kind of weird. This goes back to your earlier question about who you worked with. But I got handed Gary's account, if you will. They're like, hey, they're divvying up artists, and I was the new guy in the block, so here, you take this newer artist that is just starting out. And he had just released an album called Black and Blue, which was great. It's still an awesome album. And I was sitting in my Gibson showroom out at Fox 5, and the album had just come out, and I was looking up on the wall at all my guitars, and there was this Black and Blue Gibson ES-137 guitar. I still have it today. And his album was Black and Blue, and Gary was playing an Epiphone Casino, which is a hollow body guitar with two P90 pickups on it. And I was reading all his articles because I was trying to get to know an artist who I didn't really know.
Right.
And I'm reading his articles and studying his style of music and all that. And I'm like, Gary loves the casino. Gary loves the casino. He's playing this orangish casino that he had bought in a pawn shop in New York. So I called, at the time, the president of Epiphone, Jim Rosenberg, and I said, Jim, can we make Gary Clark Jr., he knew who he was, can you make him a Black and Blue? Like I said, that Midnight Blue. He goes, I'm familiar with it. He said, why don't we make Gary a couple of guitars in Midnight Blue to go with his album, right? He's like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So he sends me 4 prototypes, 2 with Bigsby tremolos on it and 2 hardtails. I'm like, these are sweet. I ship them off to Austin, Texas, to Gary's manager, his tour manager at the time. And they show up on Gary's doorstep, and he's freaking out. He's like, oh, my God, this is amazing. And he loved them.
Right.
And so I go to Guitar Center one day randomly here, and on the Guitar Center has these, they're monthly or quarterly pamphlets that they have. Right. You can get what's on sale, what's going on. And there's Gary with this Black and Blue casino wearing a John Varvatos gray suit, cool-looking thing with a vest and a hat. Guy just looks like $1 million, and that guitar's popping on that gray. So the GM of our local GC says, what the hell? Where's that guitar? We could sell 1 million of those, right?
Right.
And I said, well, okay. So I go back to Jim. I'm like, hey, GC's asking. He's like, yeah, we're getting calls from all over the country. I said, let's get a deal. So we got a deal with Gary and signed it up, and we made 1,500 of those guitars, and they sold out like that. Fastest selling Epiphone signature in many, many, many years outside of John Lennon stuff. And just crushed it. So then he goes on the Grammys with it, and he's back-to-back on stage with Beyonce. So now the calls are just coming in like, oh, my God, this guitar. The guitar was everywhere. You could see Gary. He would have that Black and Blue guitar. So then he does Sonic Highways with the Foo Fighters. And Pat Smear gives him a red SG guitar. And all of a sudden I see Gary playing this SG. But rewind a little bit, I see him playing a white Fender Strat. Now I'm like, no.
You can't do that, bro.
The devil.
Don't do it.
Person who doesn't love a great Strat.
Right.
I do. But he's playing a Strat. And I'm like, no, all this hard work. I'm like, why is he... So it turns out his wife bought him this Strat, and he is managed by the same guy that manages Eric Clapton and Sheryl Crow and some others. And so, of course, when he sees Eric playing a Strat, and he's easily influenced, he's going to play a Strat a little bit, and why not? He's a guitar player. It's like having one guitar is Rare. I mean, if you're an artist, it's like Bob Ross. If you just used the big old brush, you wouldn't be Bob Ross.
Right.
You got to have all the little ones,
Yeah.
right? And then the big ones.
Yeah.
And so it's like a tool. And it may be your sound or your look, but he's good. So now he's an emerging artist, so he's gonna
Right.
try new things.
Right.
So then I see him with the SG, and I think, well, light bulb. I mean, how could we get him on an SG and get him tones similar to a Strat? It kind of seems
Right.
like that's the way to approach this. So I called my buddy, who's the legendary luthier, master luthier now at Gibson, Jim DeCola, and I said, Jim, can we do this? He's like, hell yeah, I can do it. And we built him a prototype. And the prototype, and his manager was like, yeah, man, he wants it to be TV yellow, like vintage yellow, like he saw in the 50s. And I said, okay, great, that would look super cool. So it comes out, and do you remember the nerd-colored banana nerd, that yellow?
Yeah.
That's what it comes out.
No, that's not TV yellow.
No, that is
that's
banana
not TV
nerd yellow. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, shit, this is not good. I'm like, this is really fucking yellow. This is bad. So we send it to him. He says, can I play it on a Lincoln commercial? Like, you like it? Oh, man, this is great. This is beautiful. Okay.
Okay.
Does a Lincoln commercial with it.
Okay.
So then he plays on the Grammys again with it. I'm like, well, okay. So before we do a signature model, I'm like, let's build two more, one with a Bigsby and one with that actually have the actual TV yellow on it. So I go to, it's on Instagram, you can see it. I go to New York. Plane catches on fire, whole other story.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember
that's the
that.
plane
Yeah.
fire story. Larry's that's the thing. So I get there and I go to his hotel room and I'm standing there in this tiny little room at the Nomad, and we pull out the three guitars. He's got his banana yellow and the two beautiful vintage sunbursts or vintage TV yellow. And he's like, I don't know. I go, I need you to pick one, and we'll make your signature guitar that, your Gibson signature that. He goes, I don't know, man. He goes, this is the one they associate with. He goes, TV yellow is gorgeous, but it's been around for 55 years. He goes, that's my guitar.
Took the nerd yellow.
So he took the nerd yellow one, and that became his signature model guitar, which is a pretty cool. I have one as well. And then we did a limited run of red Heritage Cherry guitars. They're really, really cool guitars.
So you talk about guitarists having multiple guitars because, right, you just can't have one.
Oh, what's the fun in that?
Yeah, you have a few, right?
I have a few.
You have a few because you did that room at Fox 5, and I remember
did.
those guitars in that studio.
I have a few. I'm trying to get rid of them. But anybody want them?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I have a few. Yeah, my wife would definitely agree with that.
Are you like a guitar hoarder trying to?
I'm trying not to be.
Yeah, trying to let
Hey,
go
look,
of that?
it's hard. It's like letting your kids go sometimes. But you have them in the closet. You have them. Like, I don't want this. I don't need this guitar anymore. Wants and needs. That's a whole other thing. But guitars need to be played too, right? Instruments need to be played. Acoustic guitars need to vibrate to get better as instruments. And the longer they sit in closets, the necks can get warped and bindings can peel off, and they need hand oils, and they just need to be played.
Yeah.
And it really is true. But they're also investment pieces in some cases. You don't just give them away,
Right.
But as far as, they all do different things. Now, eventually, they're all guitars, true. But I love 12-string guitars. I play a lot of 12 strings, and I'm not as much into recording. If I was really into recording, then you'd probably be pulling that one out because I think this guitar sounds great on that song. And,
Right.
For me, I pretty much play 5 or 6, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think most musicians are probably like that. They probably have their favorites that they go to. I'm like, okay, this one I just know. And, of course, you have scale lengths and neck widths and things that are different. So once you settle in, if I'm playing with the band, I'm like, I usually will probably bring the same 3 guitars to a gig just because I don't want to be on a gig trying to go, oh, I'm not really familiar with this guitar. It doesn't feel
Right.
right, or it doesn't sound the
Right.
same as I'm
It's your
used
tools.
to. It's my tools.
It's like a chef with the
it's-
knives. You don't
it's
just bring
totally-
one.
Right.
Right.
That's actually the case.
Do you have a favorite guitar of your own?
Oh, God. Not one.
You had to get rid of them all. Your wife, I'm leaving you
Oh,
unless you get rid of all of them, but you can have one.
My Gibson Songwriter 12-string.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one you'll see me playing with most.
Yeah, and where do we get to see you play?
Where am I playing next? I'm at the Hard Rock Cafe, April 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the morning.
And did you build that?
We have
Yeah.
built a new stage on the second floor of my company, Las Vegas Music and Events, working with them. It's cool. It's a content stage, kind of stuff like this,
Yeah.
plus acoustic performances, and it's got amazing views.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of inspired by the Tiny Desk concert kind of vibe, and something really warm, similar to what we did at the Fox 5 studio. Really warm tones, rugs, kind of that unplugged vibe. It's not meant for big bands. We've had 4-piece bands in there, but they're scaled down and
Right.
kind of thing. But super vibe. Boy, the backdrop on that second floor, you're looking at T-Mobile Arena, Italy, and New York,
Yeah,
New
the
York
heart
in
of the strip,
It's-
basically.
It's the money shot for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it's cool.
You put a lot of love into that. A lot of time and a lot of love.
It's
Took a
it's
few
still
years,
a
right?
work in progress.
Yeah.
We're not done yet. We're getting close. Yeah, it's cool. I love doing stuff like that because that's the creative stuff. So it's not just about playing. My company, that's really what gets me the juices flowing.
Yeah,
know.
because you started the company when you left Gibson. You started your own.
I did. Yeah, I started that. We do a lot of. We're not a large scale event company. We're a small business that works with a lot of country clubs, a Hard Rock Cafe. We try to do these smaller Big Dogs Brewing's a great client. Do all their beer festivals, mostly audio production, entertainment procurement, event consultation. How's your event going to flow? Stage and set design.
Right.
Because that was my background with Gibson, was creating those things. I did a lot. I helped design all of the CES and NAMM booths, along
Right.
with others, of course. But so that's where my brain works in the creative field. I'm a half-baked guitar player, but I love to sing and play as well.
What's your future? What are you thinking? Anything? You gonna step outside and do anything different?
I want to retire.
Yeah. What do you want to do when you retire?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. Travel.
Travel. I thought he was gonna say
I
play
love
guitars.
travel. I am not traveled. COVID sucked, and I haven't traveled enough. And my wife and I are going to go into France for 2 weeks in May, which is exciting. See London as well. But I want to go south. I want to go see some ruins and get back now that I'm healthy again and
Yeah.
can move. Get back and my daughter's on her own, doing great. She lives in Canada, and she's studying and living her best life, so my wife and I can get out and do things. But you never really retire from the music business.
I don't think do.
It's in your soul, right? It's
Yeah.
in your blood. It was in my
DNA.
dad's blood, and,
Yeah.
and what were you going to quit from? I mean, really, as long as you could still do it and people still want to listen to what you do, why would you quit? Unless you just don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
I'll never become one of those jaded musicians that I saw around my dad's era that just, if I don't get paid this amount, I'm not doing it. I don't do that. I get paid, certainly, and I love getting paid to play, but it doesn't drive me. I don't say I'll never play music unless you pay me. And that's where I think that a lot of people, this is just my opinion, I think that's where a lot of people lose their passion
Right.
for what was once just something you did innocently because you loved it. You
Yeah.
freaking loved that shit, right? And you couldn't wait to go gig. My brothers and I used to, our first gigs were at, this is fun too. When we started out, my brothers, we've had a band now for 27 years. My brothers and I have been playing music in this town for 27 years.
Wow.
And so we started out like everybody else in that era with acoustic guitars and long hair and bad goatees and
What were you
we're
playing?
like, well, where can we? Yeah, it was all Alice in Chains and
Yeah.
you know, whatever the live and you know, all that unplugged,
Toad the Wet
all that.
Sprocket
Yeah,
shit,
oh yeah,
yeah.
oh yeah, all that '90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Stone Temple Pilots,
Yeah.
of course, and Oasis, and all the things you could just strum, you know, a G and E minor, D and an A and a C, and get through, and you learned a sus chord, Larry. It was like, wow, that was cool. But we of course, we were hacks, and we didn't know where to play. We didn't know anybody would actually ask us to play. So my brother was drinking. Imagine that this is years ago, at a bar with his roommate out on Boulder Highway. For no reason whatsoever. They were just random bar out on Boulder Highway. I don't even know it's still there. And we don't live anywhere near Boulder Highway, by the way. I'm like, I don't know why they were out there.
Right.
But he comes back. He's like, dude. He's like, I met these people from Good Springs. I'm like, what? I'm like, where the fuck is Good Springs at? He's like, yeah, man, there's like this bar out there. It's like this tin bar or something like that. It's supposed to be really cool. This is 1996 or 95. Mm-hmm. He's like, we should go out there, man. And so we go out there. And for those of you that have been to the Pioneer Saloon recently, mind you, it looked nothing like this.
Because it's like a
This
tourist
bar
spot
was
now.
on the verge of finally
Yeah.
collapsing, you
Right.
know, like that scene in Mad World where the gas station collapses on itself. It's done. There's nobody out there. There's like 5 collective teeth amongst the 30 people in there.
Right.
Right. So we get in there, and I bring my newly acquired Martin guitar out there, and we walk in. I'm scared to death. I'm like, I'm going to actually play Wonderwall in front of somebody. I shouldn't be playing in front of myself, but okay. We get out there. Couldn't have been nicer people, right? They were just so happy that somebody from the city came out to this bar.
Right.
They didn't serve food. They had the only food they had were pickled eggs and Lay's potato chips. You washed your hands with borax soap and you peed on ice in the men's room. That's the Pioneer Saloon
yeah.
that I knew. And they had this asshole member club. And you would sign up for this. You'd have to pay like $50 to be a member, an official asshole of the Pioneer Saloon Club. I'm officially asshole number 1001, just for anybody keeping notes. So we'd go out there, and I'm like shaking. We'd be driving up the road. I'm like nervous as hell. We get up there, and there's like 6 or 8 people in the bar, and a couple of our friends came out with us, and we'd start strumming. And can I show you a picture?
Yeah.
So I just happened to take this picture off my desk yesterday. Let me get all the naked pictures out of there.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Nudities.
this is a picture of my brothers and me in the Pioneer Saloon in 1996 with one of their locals on drums in the background, who has since passed away. And that picture says so much to me about what I was saying earlier about music and money. And
Wow.
I'll never forget, we played out there until about 2001. After 9/11, I think so we played out there. Now, that was early where there was nothing. It was like, I think I had an acoustic amplifier, and we were singing through one speaker. My brother wasn't even playing drums yet. He was just shaking the tambourine. My brother wasn't even playing a bass. He drinking a Coors Light and singing through an old mic. And so what happened is over the next couple of years, I started acquiring more gear. This is where this shit started, that many years ago.
Right.
And so we'd start going out there every weekend. None of our friends were married. No one had kids yet. And so we were like, hey, man, we're going to the Pioneer Saloon. Now we got a band. Joe's playing drums. David's playing guitar. We got another guitar player. Then we're like, well, what are we going to call our band? Now we're actually a band. We're going to call it Exit 12 because that's the exit to Good Springs.
Good Springs.
So
yeah.
our band and our logo was the green Exit 12 sign. And so we'd play out there 4, 5, 6, 8 times a year during that time. And we started playing these biker rallies. They're like 200-300 people. It started out as that, and now it's all these people, and that was the infection right there. That's where it started, right? You just like, oh, man, this is the coolest thing ever. And then all of a sudden you're like singing harmonies and Beatles songs. You're going, oh, my shit, this is so cool. And then we start gigging in town. They actually let us play inside the city limits. And started getting in the little bar scene with some other
Yeah.
bands that were pretty good and actually much better than us. But we held our own. And it's funny, all these years later and all that gear later, I look back and I got my brothers still. We just played this past Saturday, and we got a bunch of gigs coming up.
Love it.
And I look at my brothers
love it.
sometimes, I think, damn, I'm a lucky dude.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to sit there, and I know my dad's looking down on us thinking, hey, man, you hit a clam there or something. But a gig doesn't go by where I don't look at my brothers and just grin and go, I can't believe we're doing this. I can't still believe somebody's paying us to do this now. That's just the bonus. I would do it for, just the pure, I do it for the pure love. Have we earned the right to get paid? Yeah. Notice I didn't say I'd play for free.
Couple drinks.
I can't do that,
Yeah.
Incrimination. But
No, yeah.
no, I just love doing it. And I'm not the only one. There's so many others that do. But I get frustrated when I see the people that, hey, man, I got to get paid. I got to get paid. I get that it's your job. I get
Right.
it. But there are some, and that's the interesting rub with musicians sometimes, is because people think, oh, you love it, so you should do it for free. And that is not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying never confuse the two. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I never want to confuse the two. I never want to just look at music, playing music, as a job. Now, I get paid to do it, and I have an events company and all that good stuff, but at the end of the day, if somebody said, Pat, would you come play guitar with me? The first thing out of my mouth wouldn't be how much to pay. I'm sure they would make me solvent, know.
Right.
I just,
Right.
if I can do it, I'm not that
Yeah.
good.
Win. Yeah.
Right.
Win.
Mm-hmm.
Describe yourself as a guitar.
As a guitar?
Yeah. Who's Patrick Genovese in guitar form?
What you mean? What if I was?
Are you a 12-string?
This is very. What's the movie with Demi Moore now, where she turned into some weird thing? If
I don't
was,
know. Is she weird? Substance?
yeah,
Is that the
that's
new one? Yeah.
That movie went sideways, literally. But anyway, if I was a guitar, well, I've gained a little weight, so I'd have to be a curvy guitar. Let's see. Well, that's a good question. God, you stumped me.
I love it.
If I was a guitar, like physically a guitar,
Yeah, like would your sound be warm? Would you be 12-string? What would you have picked?
I think I would be a 12-string 'cause I'm jangly. I think my wife would say I'm prickly and jangly sometimes. Like I can be rattled, even though I'm not rattled. But it's just that's what I associate myself with is the warm. I guess it would be more a warm. I think I'm a warm person. The warm sound of a 12-string guitar would probably be the best musical description if you had to reach and stretch.
Would you be nerd yellow though?
No, I'd be sunburst because if you look at my neck, I have the worst redneck tans because I don't dare take my shirt off in public.
Thank you.
Oh my God,
I
this is great.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.